All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. We are in the lovely $1 billion studio here, and joining me, we have quite a few people. Um, First, we have Kyle Widmeyer, good brother. You guys know him from the 144,000 episode that we did together. And we plan to do some more, obviously. And just excited to have him on today to talk about his testimony with regards to keeping the sabbatical year, which is today's topic. We also have returning to the podcast, we have none other than Cyrus Harding. And if you guys don't know Cyrus, we did, I believe, was episode number 11, the World War III astronomical forecast. And Brother Cyrus, he's a wealth of knowledge. Really, really excited to have him here. Obviously, you guys know his background, being in the NSA and, military, and just he brings a lot of analytical and interesting thoughts to the table. But he also is going to share his testimony and some of the things that he does for the sabbatical year that I really know that is really going to bless you guys. And also joining us for the first time in Overcome Babylon is none other than Joseph Dumont. And quite frankly, I don't even know where to begin with this one because I have right here, I have all of Joe's books. And, I don't, can you guys see that? Prophecies of Abraham. Where do I start with Joe? Nominated for Nobel Prize in Literature for Prophecies of Abraham in 2011. Author of numerous books, including 2300 Days of Hell, Remembering the Sabbatical Years, which I have right here. And obviously, this is going to be a big, big topic today. Remembering the Sabbatical Years. Next one's coming up next year, right? And Joe brings so much analysis. He's been just a faithful blogger, really teaching the brethren for quite a long time now. All the words, not letting any of God's words fall to the ground, but being faithful to teach really a lot of things that a lot of people don't want to touch, a lot of complicated topics. He's really dissected them, made them easy for us to understand. And for that, I'm just really thankful. And we're glad to have you here joining us, Brother Joe. Now, to start off this whole topic, so the sabbatical year, I just want to go ahead and lay a little bit of a foundation here. And I know, some of you guys know my story, that when I first got into this walk, it was actually 2015. I was still attending Christian churches back then, but there's something missing, right? We all feel that at some point. And so I started hanging out with Jews. And in Denver, Colorado, there was this congregation of Reformed Jews. And I just started learning about some of the things they're doing. And they had a farm that was attached to a church. And so I started, helping them with the farm and helping with things. And it just so happened that it was a sabbatical year. I believe for them it was coming up, but anyways, it was 2015, 16. And I asked them, how do you guys keep the sabbatical year, which they call a Shmitah? And, and they basically told me you really can't. And they just kept farming the land. They kept farming that piece of land in Denver. And that's, I was like, okay, I guess you can't really do anything. So that was my, when I was inquiring and trying to figure out the sabbatical year, that was my experience. And I think that's the experience of a lot of people. We're just it's one of those commands in the Bible I don't really know what to do with. It's abstract. It seems like it only applies to certain people in a certain physical location. It seems really complicated. So there's a couple of places we could go with this, but really, I want to start by just reading Leviticus 25, just to lay that kind of groundwork. And then I have a lot of questions for you guys. So I'm really excited. So Leviticus 25, this is what it says. And I'm reading from the New King James. When it says Lord in all caps, I always say Yehovah because it's better to say the name than not try. So, or at least try than not say it at all, right? So Leviticus 25, we're starting in verse 1. And Yehovah spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to Yehovah. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Shabbat of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to Yehovah. You shall not neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. What grows of its own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. And the Sabbath produce of the land shall be food for you, your male and female servants, your hired man, and the stranger who dwells with you, for your livestock and the beasts that are in your land. All its produce shall be for food. Now, I'm not going to read all the rest of it quite yet. Let's just look at Leviticus 25, verse 8, and you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, and the time of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be to you 49 years, which obviously we've made a really big point on this podcast to discuss the significance of the 49-year periods throughout history. And so, to start off this discussion, okay, I just read Leviticus 25. We also see this topic of the sabbatical year, this every 7th year of rest. We also see that repeated in Deuteronomy 15, which we'll talk about a little later. And we also see another specific command in Deuteronomy 31. But really, so I want to kind of open up this discussion about how do we keep the sabbatical year, with a question for Joe. How do we even know? And I know this is a loaded question, it's quite large, but how would you explain, how do we know that next year in 2023 is the sabbatical year? Because the Jews and a lot of camps are saying, hey, it was this year, right?
Yeah. So, well, the simple answer is go to 2 Kings 19:29. And that gives you a sabbatical year, the 49th year and the 50th year back to back. And all you got to do is check your history and you'll find out that that event took place in 701 BC. So if you got 701 BC as the 49th year, you just count by 7. And you count by 7 going forward and backward. You'll hit every sabbatical year in history. And what I've been blessed with is to be able to find 89 or 88 other sabbatical and jubilee years to compare it to. And every one of them lines up and matches that 2 Kings 19:29. In this year, you shall eat what grows of itself. And then next year, you shall eat what grows of the same. In the 3rd year, you shall plant and sow and harvest. So that was 701 BC. So count by 7 from 701 BC. Understand that there's no year 0. And you'll end up with next year being a sabbatical year. I did an interview with Nehemiah Gordon back in 2018, and he popped on me a new revelation that I hadn't heard of before, that Rambam wrote his book and edited his own book, and then said, when he was asked a question about the sabbatical year, that the Jews keep the sabbatical year a year and a half or last year, but the actual sabbatical year was this year, in the year that he was editing his book. When I checked that, it again confirmed everything that I had said. I had a new proof now from Rambam himself that the sabbatical years that I'm keeping are the correct ones, and the ones of the Jews, according to Rambam himself, the ones that the Jews are keeping, which is last year until this fall, are the wrong ones. They're doing that by tradition. So I got tons of proof, and you just got to prove it for yourself. Once you've done the proving of for yourself, all these other questions that come along are just, you realize how they don't hold any water.
Right. So there's a lot with what Joe just said. And, for the listeners, if you go to episode 4, I believe it is, of this podcast with the 120 cycles, you can see how I derived all the way from the creation of Adam to now, how each 7-year period and each 49-year period, it all lines up on my charts. And in fact, 2023 is the next year, starting in Aviv. It is the next year of land rest. So I guess we don't have to spend too much time here, because you can either read about it in Joe's books. He's wrote about it in the Remembering the Sabbatical Years of 2016. You can find the how we derive the date there. You can look at my podcast if you prefer to watch and listen rather than read. You can look at my stuff. But either way, yeah, it's pretty clear when you look at the chronology, starting with Adam all the way, and doing basically the chronology the way that you've laid it out, Joe, which is what I really just did is fact check you on my podcast, right? And it all checks out, man. It's beautiful. And so really quickly, I'm curious why you start with 701 BC. We have a lot of dates. Can you just describe what was going on in the 701 BC in Kings that you're talking about?
Well, in 701 BC, Sennacherib comes against Hezekiah in Jerusalem. Excuse me. The reason that's important is because there's only 2 dates. We have only 2 dates to to know when the Israelite and Jewish kings reigned. One was 701 BC because it's recorded on a stele by Sennacherib, who admits that he came against Jerusalem and defeated them, but never captured them. The other date is the Battle of Karkar in 853 BC, I think it is. And if we didn't have those two dates, we wouldn't know when any Israelite king reigned, because they found nothing except the references of these two dates. So that's important. Most people start off doing the chronology in Genesis, and then they get to a point where they get confused, especially around Judges, and you can't figure it out. Judges is impossible to figure out. No one has been able to do that as far as I know. So you're stuck there. You can skip the Judges. You can go from Abraham to the Exodus, but again, you're still stuck in Judges. So you got a block of time that you can work with from the creation of Adam in Genesis 1 until the Exodus, but you don't know where to put it because you cannot match that with our modern chronology of Gregorian years starting in BC and AD or Common Era.
So Joe,
you got
just to pause you real quick. So this is what I found, and I'm just curious if we're coming to the same conclusion. But the reason that we kind of get stuck, right, is because we're not given all of the firstborn sons in like a fashion where we can add up the years, right?
Well, yeah. After you can come up to Joseph. Well, yeah, you come up to Joseph, and then after that, it gets hard. So most people have trouble with the chronology after that. You're muted.
I interrupted you there. Sorry. But so another good question as well is, we've done the chronology, and this is something that I don't completely understand still, is why the Jews are so many years different from the 5,880 that we're really approaching right now. Because what year are we in right now? We're in 5,856?
58, 58.
58, that's right.
58,
Yeah.
58, and right now at Aviv will be 58, 59.
Yeah. And so my question is, why are the Jews like they're in like 5,700 something, right?
Yeah, 82, I think, or 83. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where it happened. It happened after Christ. It happened after the Bar Kokhba revolt. Rabbi Yossi, however you want to pronounce his name, had to create a chronology to make Simon Bar Kokhba fit the Daniel 9 prophecy. So he rewrote history, shortened the Persian period by quite a bit in order to make the first destruction of the temple match with the second destruction of the temple in 70 AD, and make that 483 years of the Daniel 9 prophecy line up with Simon Bar Kokhba. Simon Bar Kokhba was coming into power in the 49th year. The 50th year was the next year in 134 AD. And so Rabbi Akiva was trying to make him out to be the Messiah. And they were going to throw off the Roman Empire and restore the temple and all this stuff. So he had to rewrite history in order to make that all work, in order for the Daniel 9 prophecy to apply to him. This was 50 years before any Christian church father began to use it for Jesus. It was the only other people that used this prophecy was the Maccabees in 162 BC for John Hyrcanus. So he's rewritten history. Simon Bar Kokhba is, he doesn't come back to life. He doesn't restore the Jewish empire. Millions of Jews are slaughtered. Rabbi Akiva, I think, was tarred and feathered or wrapped in a Torah scroll and lit on fire. I'm not sure. I forget how that went. But it was a big disaster. The church fathers, the Genome, or not the church fathers, the Jewish fathers, the sages, they call that, I believe that period was called the Genome period. They took everything that was said about Simon Bar Kokhba and threw that out. But the history that Rabbi Yossi rewrote, they kept. And they applied that to their everyday knowledge going forward. So it's out by 76 years from what I'm saying. How did that happen? Well, there's 76 years missing in Matthew 1 verse 8. If you read Matthew 1 verse 8, you'll see that there's 4 Jewish kings that are not there. Most people never see it because they don't go and check. But there's 4 kings missing, and those 4 kings, Athaliah, I forget. Athaliah starts with him anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought this up, because you're the only person that I've ever even heard talking about that. The connection to, hey, there's kings missing here. And no, I'm just so glad you brought that up, because I actually was going to ask you about that as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, there's 76 years. The total reign is 76 years, 76 and a half years, which is exactly the difference between the Jewish calendar and our dating system using the sabbatical and jubilee year cycles. So, it's a little bit involved, and it involves a lot of history and research. And most people, they don't have a mindset to do that. So, they're very short-lived flipping pages. They look at a picture and move on to the next one. So to do actual research is not something most people do. So that's what we've done there to find out, why is there this difference? How did it come about? And that's what I've learned. That's what I've come to understand. And it's, if you're going to go by the Jewish calendar, you still got what is it, 250 years or something like that? No, 57. So it's 220 years to the year 6000. And even those people that are using the year 6000 are deceiving themselves, because they're admitting that they don't know anything about the sabbatical jubilee years. They've assumed that it's 50 years. And they haven't done any research, haven't done any investigations. I don't even know if they've read Leviticus 25. Again, you can tell a lot by a person's understanding from what they start to talk, how they start to talk.
And that's precisely why when I read the foundation, which is scripture, right? That's our foundation from which we build everything. Excuse me. I was reading Leviticus 25:8, right? That was the last thing I read. You shall count 7 Sabbaths of years. 7 times 7, it's 49, right? 49 years.
Yeah.
It never says count by 50. It says recognize the 50th year. It is the year of release. It is the year of Jubilee, but it never says count by 50. It says count by 49, right? And I'm just excited to just have you on here, Joe, because you're the one that really opened my eyes to this. I actually have run into people that teach 50-year chronologies, and they make it make sense, but and you can push kind of an agenda and idea for sure, and you can back it up with history and try to do the best you can. But when you really put the feet to the fire, it's true that the 49-year periods, they hold true, and everything else kind of crumbles one way or the other when you start looking at the chronologies, right?
So let me interrupt you on that and just say, let's say they're right. Let's put their feet to the fire. Let's go and find all these sabbatical and jubilee years, plot them out, which is what I've done in my charts. Now count by 50. Count by 50 from whatever jubilee year that you've got figured out. So the only jubilee year that you can have would be 2 Kings 19:29. But most people don't use that. They use the what do they use? They use the Luke. What is it? Luke 6. This is the acceptable year of the Lord. So they take that as a jubilee year and start counting from that. Well, what year was that? They don't know, so they're guessing. When is the jubilee year? They don't really know. They just guess. But then, whenever they start guessing from whenever the jubilee year is, it has to match every single sabbatical year known in history. So people, Wacholder, Marcus, Schur, and someone else I forgot, they discard those years, the evidence that they have, and they throw it out because it doesn't match their theory. Well, that's just plain wrong. They throw out a scripture in Maccabees that tells you that in the 11th month, they broke off a siege against Jericho, Bezra, I believe is the name, because it was the 11th month and the sabbatical year is about to begin. That means the sabbatical year is about to begin at Aviv. So they throw that out and discount that. Take your 50-year hypothesis and plot it out and make sure that it matches every sabbatical year known in history. Because that means that you're going to count 49, 50, 1, 2, 3. That's your theory. Prove it. You know, that's what I say at siteofmoon.com. Prove all things. You cannot prove it. It's impossible to have a sabbatical year line up with a 49, 50, 1, 2, 3 count. There are some that will line up, but not all of them, because it throws the whole system out of whack. When you count by 49, and then, you know, again, you mentioned Leviticus 25, I think 8 or 10. Go back to Leviticus 25:3 and read about how to count to Shavuot. It's almost the exact same verbiage, right? 49, 7 Sabbaths, then the 50th day is on the first day of the week. This Jubilee cycle is the same thing. The 50th year is on the first year of the next count. It's, you know, when we complicate things and hold on to that wrong doctrine, then everything else after that becomes wrong itself. And I tell people, take your preconceived church ideology, put it in a suitcase, and leave it at the door when you leave that church. And then start from Genesis 1 and read it with brand new, fresh, messianic eyes and understand. You count to 7. That's all you got to do. Count to 7, repeat it, count to 7, repeat it, count to 7. And you do that from now until infinity, and you will always be at the right sabbatical year. You'll always be at the right Sabbath. You'll always be at the right Jubilee or the right Shavuot. You just got to count 7. So I'm going on a little bit long here. Sorry.
No, you're okay, Joe. I agree with you, man. Like, we suffer from especially, I mean, think about social media. You think about things like Instagram. You think about all these different little platforms, TikTok, all these little devices. And it's like, we have as a society, the goldfish mentality. And so, yeah, I just encourage anyone listening to this, just do your research on this stuff. Don't take our word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Joe's word for it. Go prove it. And when you do, the blessing is in the proving, the process of proving. And I'm telling you, I was so blessed with understanding fresh insights from the scriptures when I started just going line by line, like Joe just said, with fresh messianic eyes. And I remember when I started publishing my findings, there was someone that approached me and said, well, have you heard of the Daniel timeline from these guys? And I believe they're in Costa Rica. And they start their whole chronology with the understanding that 1917 was something significant. And then the Messiah is supposed to come back in 2017. That didn't happen. And why weren't they counting until 2067 if they're counting by 50-year cycles? And so I easily was able to disprove that.
Are those people still publishing, still teaching, and still prophesying?
I have no idea.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And it wasn't the people in Costa Rica. It was other people up in, let me just be real general, North America.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I ran into that, and then that I had to kind of like, okay, I got to work through this 50-year thing. And as you prove it, right, you're blessed. And so I guess segueing a little bit into the meat, the heart of the message, right? How do we keep the sabbatical years, right? We know the next one's in 2023 in Abib. How do we keep it? And so I want to read really quickly from the scriptures here. And let's look at Leviticus 25:20. It says, and if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year? Since we shall not sow nor gather in our produce, then I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, and it will bring forth produce enough for 3 years. And you shall sow in the 8th year and eat the old produce until the 9th year. Until its produce comes in, you shall eat of the old harvest. So I just want to pause right there. That's kind of, even back then, it had to be addressed. People are like, I don't know how to do this. How do we keep this? If we can't sow, we can't plant, we can't do that. And just look at how he responds. Our God is a God of abundance, that he is going to command his blessing. And I will make the argument that right now, as we all sit here, right, we're all gathered together right now. And as you're listening to this, we still have access to abundance. It's going away. It is going away. You see the news headlines. You see what's going on in the world. It is going to go away. But right now, our dollars are still worth something. Our dollars can still buy that stored harvest right now. We still have access. And so, who should I pick on here? Who wants to jump in? I kind of want to talk to Kyle for a moment, because I know, like, brother Joe, you know Kyle Cyrus. I don't, you two haven't been acquainted, but Kyle's testimony is really fire. It's really, really powerful when we talk about keeping the sabbatical year and just his circumstances. So I want to give brother Kyle Widmeyer just an opportunity. Just share with us your testimony, brother, how you kind of, I guess, figured out, and then started preparing, and then what happened as a result of that preparation and keeping the sabbatical year. So the floor is yours. Um, you know, we love to hear your thoughts, brother.
Okay, well, I don't really know where to start. I guess, I was just doing the normal Christian thing and everything. And then I think it was in 2008, 2009, I got laid off and trying to find a job or whatever. And I just started doing some research. I finally had time to start doing some research. And that's when I started coming into, like, I guess you would say, the Messianic form of belief that I kind of have now or whatever. But I found Michael Rood and all that, and I started kind of like what you did. I started leaning towards the Jewish side of things and everything. And I actually had a Reformed temple here that I started visiting. They weren't quite so receptive to me going as what sounds like they were for you.
Yeah, I had the same experience. Yeah, I wasn't well received, and they were Reformed. Did I mention that? They weren't Orthodox, they're Reformed, so they have a little bit more liberal interpretation of the Bible. Yep.
Yep, and they are, the one here too is Reformed as well. So, anyways, some of that stuff just wasn't lining up, and then as I was just trying to figure things out and living life, all of a sudden things just kind of started going badly for me. I ended up finding another job. It was like a year or two or something like that. And then I was working and then I lost my job. The landlord where I was living, he sold the apartment complex out. And the new owners were coming in raising rent by like $350 a month. So I just lost my job. I couldn't afford that. So I ended up having to move into with a friend at his house. And it was an old house. It was just a hair above being a shack. And I had two young kids at the time and my wife, and all four of us had a small bedroom. It wasn't much bigger than most bathrooms are. And that's what we were living in. And I was sitting there wondering, like, what the heck? I finally found some truth and I'm trying to move forward. Why are things going backwards? But anyways, I kept my head up and I just kept studying. The wife was blessed enough that she got a job. She had a job, but she got a promotion. And so we were able, with our situation, to keep moving forward. So I had some extra time to start studying. And that's when I found a video of Joe on YouTube. And I don't even know if he had Prophecies of Abraham out yet. I think the video title was called The Prophecies of Abraham.
This was back in '09, right? Like
somewhere right in there.
Because you're about to observe the sabbatical. So did you observe the sabbatical year of 2009 or no?
No, I did not observe the sabbatical year of 2009. Actually, I'm thinking that this was more in 2012.
Okay.
When I found Joe's video. But anyways, no, it was 2015 because I remember now. Okay, so anyways, I found Joe's video. I started seeing what he was doing. I paused the video. I didn't even finish watching this video. I just paused it right there. I grabbed my Bible and I started doing kind of what he was doing from Genesis. Add this, add that, look at this, going through everything, through the Abraham, discrepancies, because there's like I don't even remember, something about like when certain things happened. Was he 80 or 85? Something along those lines, I worked through, I didn't even get to that part in Joe's video. I don't think we got past, just adding up the years of, before the flood. And I paused Joe's video and I went all the way through and everything. I was like, okay, I got it all mapped out. All the way up basically to the Exodus. Then I went back to his video and I pressed play and I finished watching the video and everything that I did matched what Joe did. And so I was like, okay, I see it there. And then of course from there, then Joe goes on to, 2 Kings That's 701 BC and everything. And I learned more from there, but I took it up to the Exodus. So I was like, okay, I see this. Went back, proved everything. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do this. I mean, Yahovah gave it to me. And who am I to, just throw it out the window? And so that's what I did is I just went out there and I just did it. And we had very low income, but I just did the best that I could do, and me and my family, we like to cook and we like to cook from scratch. I'm not open up a back box of mac and cheese and boil it and put the powder in there, or whatever. We'll make our own cheese sauce, whatever. I've even made my own noodles and everything. But so for me, it was easier to go that route. And so I stacked my food away. I bought I think I bought 1,000 mason jars, quart-sized mason jars.
Wow, man.
And I'm blessed to live in an agricultural area. So I started going to all the local fruit stands and stuff around here. And I just bought like 6 cases of tomatoes and, all this different fruit and everything. And I just started canning everything. Bought a bunch of, just stuff like that, bought some flour and everything. And right before the sabbatical year started, it was in September of 2015. I got a little bit of a blessing. Well, the wife got another little bit of a promotion, and ended up a friend of ours. He had just bought a duplex, and he was living in one half. He was looking for a renter for the other half, and he was also kind of in the same belief, not the same place, but he just gave us an opportunity. He gave us a decent rent price and everything. We were able to move out of there. Well, as soon as we moved out of there, I had more room. So I went and I bought a bunch more stuff. So I had everything stockpiled up at right before the sabbatical year started, and I was set and ready to go. And then we just did it. And I made bread every day. Of course, the kids helped. At that time, I think my daughter was like 11, 12, something like that. So she helped a lot with the making the bread and everything. But yeah, we just, all the food we stocked away, and that's what we did.
Go ahead and finish up your story, Kyle. I just wanted to say we'll dive into like what to set aside. I want to know what your guys' like lists are. Like what are the staples? What are some things that are like just standard? Gotta have them. We'll jump into that. But go ahead, Kyle. I want to hear, because what happens next, because I know Kyle's story, but what happens next is it really blew me away when you first talked about it. So just go ahead, brother.
Well, it took a little bit to come to fruition, honestly, but we did the sabbatical year, no problem. And all the time, my wife was just moving up where she was working, and kept getting raises, and we were able to start putting money back and everything. And this is after sabbatical year, of course, but just through the years. And then, I've really, been within the last 2 to 3 years, we've really seen the full fruition of the blessing from following that sabbatical year. And so hopefully I'm not missing anything that you're wanting me to talk about. But it was 2 years ago now, I think. The place where my wife works, the owner decided she didn't want the business anymore. She just wanted to move on, and she basically offered to sell it to us, owner finance. And so we bought that. And so instead of being the manager of that place now, we're the owners of it. And since we've bought that, the business has almost doubled. Almost the day that we bought the business from her, it was like the next day, all of a sudden, we were just hitting numbers that the previous owner never even saw before. And so, just that's pretty much paid off now.
Amazing, brother. And what kind of business is it again? Like what's all involved with it?
So it's a dog daycare, boarding, grooming, training facility. And that's pretty self-explanatory, I guess,
No, that's
great. We have a daycare portion to it. And so, people who don't want to leave their dogs at home, while they're at work or whatever, they'll bring their dogs in the morning, and just like a kid daycare, and they'll come and pick their dogs up, in the afternoon and evening when they get off of work. And those are the numbers that exploded, because she was doing like 30-ish dogs a day, and almost the day after that we bought it, we started hitting 50 and 60 dogs a day.
That's insane, man. Wow. So I want everybody to just pause for a moment and catch that. And I believe it. I absolutely believe it, that the blessing that you received was a direct result of obedience, specifically with the sabbatical year, which it requires faith, man. Like this is my first one. This is my first one, because I tried in 2015, 16, but the Jews told me no. And I didn't have the resources to be asking those questions. I felt stuck. And so even though like we only have a few months left until this year is over, and we have a Aviv coming up, and the next year is going to start, I encourage anyone who has not prepared yet that you still have time. We're going to talk about the details and specifics, but you still have time, and you still have an opportunity to receive a blessing, a huge blessing, because abundance, when people talk about wealth and abundance in churches, right, usually they just talk about one of two things. Give me tithing money. Usually the pastor will say that, and then they'll say, oh, the love of money is evil or whatever. But I'm telling you that our God is a God of abundance. And when you heed his calling, when you obey his commandments, you will be blessed. That is a guarantee. If you tithe to a church, you might be blessed, you might not be. But I can say for a fact that if you obey his commandments, you will be blessed in one way or another. You're going to be blessed. So I encourage everybody listening, partake of the blessing. All right. Don't miss out on it, because we still have time. And I have, when you were talking, Kyle, I was like, oh, I need to ask Joe about this and this. I got a few more questions for Joe. Hopefully we have a little bit more time with you, Joe. Cyrus, really quickly, I want Brother Cyrus's testimony. And I want to start with a question for you, Cyrus. When was the first sabbatical year that you had the opportunity to observe?
That would be 2016 as well. And basically about the same time Kyle did, we came to an understanding of when the sabbatical jubilee years were. And so we we just said, okay, this is what we know. We know it's coming, so we're going to keep it. And everybody in the hall said, okay, we're going to do our best to keep it. So going into the sabbatical year and getting to Sukkot, we had people coming down from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Right now, I'm in West Central Illinois, where we celebrated Sukkot, and Kathy came down from West Central Illinois. Others came from other places, and we read Torah right there on Main Street in our little town in Texas, just like we're commanded to do every seventh year, to read Torah. And so we did. We read it 3 times during Sukkot, didn't we? I think it was. And that was a huge, huge blessing. But we garden, Kathy gardens, and we were so blessed going into 2016. We put up, it was funny because we were sitting here listening to it, and you said 1,000 jars, and it's like, that's a good start. That's a good start. We put up thousands of jars, and and this year has been, it was an explosive year as far as our garden. We had some failures, but we had so many successes that we had to expand our pantry. We have 3 pantries, and one of them is just our sabbatical year pantry. But we ran out of room in it. We ran out of room in the small pantry, and I have a 6 by 15 pantry, 6 feet by 15 feet, 8 feet high, and it shelves all the way up, and it's just full. And so, Jehovah blessed us, and I look at it this way: it's way more than what my wife and I need. So all I can surmise is Jehovah knows that I'm going to need the surplus. And so without us knowing it, he gave us the surplus for us to put away, because I believe 2023 is going to be a very trying year. So I look at this surplus and I just say, Praise Yah.
Yeah, and see, hopefully, for the listeners, you caught the significance of what Cyrus just said. Obedience also, when you start being obedient, you see the results of that obedience. Now all of a sudden there's prophetic elements to it. You're like, wait a minute, this is way too much. Now all of a sudden you're asking the questions. You're like, okay, I need to be a servant in these capacities. Now the door is open. Now you're seeing things that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. That obedience made that possible.
Yeah.
Obedience made the almost like a prophetic preparation possible. And now you're able to serve people in a different way that you would not have been equipped to do so otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's a
we were
beautiful thing.
going into a Jubilee year, I'd say, wow, we've got enough for a sabbatical year and a Jubilee year because we've had so much excess. But I know we're not going into a Jubilee year, so what is it? And only thing I can, arrive at is, Yah knows that we're going to need the surplus for those who have not prepared. I'm sure in our family, because they just refuse to heed the warning. And I get such, comments like, well, I'll buy an extra can of Spam or something like that. But it's about being faithful to all of his commands. That's what we're discussing yesterday for Shemini Atzeret, is it's about being write down, think about what happened, and I apologize for kind of getting off topic. Think about what happened in Jeremiah 32, verses 1 through 27. Jeremiah is under guard. Okay, he has been under guard for years. He knows Jehovah told him 20 years ago that I'm going to destroy Jerusalem and Yehuda. And then Jehovah tells him, buy this field. Well, why? That doesn't make any sense. He's under guard. He's going to be carried off to Babylon. Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. Where he won't be around in 70 years. Why buy this field? Because he wanted him to be obedient to his command in order to get the blessing. And that's exactly what happened. Go, Joe.
Joe, are we losing you?
See you again.
I gotta go, but man, you got me all fired up here. I'm just about to blow a gasket. Cyrus is right. He's not storing food for a Jubilee year. He's storing food for 10 years. But there's so much about to happen starting in 2023. Again, the Jubilee cycles are prophecies. Kyle's blessing. That is a sabbatical year blessing. Forgiveness of debts. That's what I had to do. I didn't like it. I had to forgive thousands of dollars. No, I don't want to do that. I need that money. No, I wrote it off because that's what you do in the sabbatical year. And I've never lacked money since then. And I started in 2009, not knowing exactly how to do it. So, again, stock up as much food as you can, because you see the store shelves going down. You see I got a report today, the Amazon River's dried up. The Mississippi's rock bottom. The Po River in Italy, the Loire in France, the Yangtze in China, the Danube, they're all drying up. Witnesses haven't even started to work yet. But we know because of the Jubilee cycles when the two witnesses begin. We also know because of the Jubilee cycles when the abomination is going to be set up. We know these things. I just don't got time to tell them all to you right now because I got to go see the doctor. But if you guys are still on when I come back out, I'll jump back in. I got to go. So stock up as much food as you can, not just for a sabbatical year, but for a number of years after. My first sabbatical year in 2009, I didn't know how much food I needed. I just started buying cans and sticking them in the basement. I ate the 2009 produce. I ate up until the year after 2016. The 2016 stuff I stored away a lot less. I ate for about, till 2020. And even in 2020, I gave away a year's worth of food, right? We sold our house. I had to give away all the food. My problem right now is I don't have a place to store food in. And my brain is figuring, how do I do this? All these people, I live in an apartment. Well, okay. I'm trying to figure out, how do I do this? with no house, no apartment. How do I do this? So that's my problem that I'm working on right now. But I will be keeping this battle for a year, come hell or high water, and both are coming. So, so forgive me. I got to jump off right now. I'm actually going to be late.
Joe, one quick
But
question. I'm sorry, one quick question. How many years, just for your gut feeling, how many years should we store up? Go for it.
store as much food as you can, because it's not
All right.
just for you, it's for everyone else. A famine is coming. A big time famine is coming. You think you're rich in the United States? You are about to be undressed like you've never been undressed before. You're not going to be. You're going to be raped. So stock up as much food as you can, but get ready, because all hell is coming. And you know, our book, The Restoration of All Things, we just published it in August. I'm about to publish the Abomination That Makes Desolate. That's what I've been speaking about all across the Philippines. And then I got to get to work on the 10 days of awe. The 10 days of awe are the scary ones. They start in 2024. So everything that Cyrus has been saying to me in our podcast has been very accurate, very true. He maybe has his target as to what he thinks is about off a little bit, but man, he's deadly accurate. So his stuff combined with my stuff, the shit's about to hit the fan. Get ready.
That's right.
And get hunkered down. You don't got time for all this religious games that everyone's playing. Stop the BS. Keep the sabbatical year. The only way you're going to survive what's coming is if you obey Jehovah. That's the only way. If you're not obeying Jehovah, you got all this food stocked up. Well, you stocked it up for somebody else, because you're going to die and someone else is going to eat it. You got to obey Jehovah. Bottom line. I got to go.
All right, Brother Joe.
But how long are you planning on being on here?
We probably will do. I was thinking another half hour, but it really comes down to these fellas here.
Okay, I'll check and see if you're still here when I come out.
All right, Brother
Shalom,
Joe.
everyone.
Shalom.
Thank you. Prove all things. Sightedmoon.com. Bye-bye.
That's right. Sightedmoon.com, guys. Check that out. Thank you, Joe. Well, brothers, it was good to have Joe here just for a few minutes, real blessing to have him. There's a few more things. So Cyrus, with what you mentioned that you did the reading of the Torah. Okay, that's Deuteronomy 15. We'll touch on that in a moment. What I really want to hit on, because now Joe's got me all kind of stirred up in my mind in one direction now, because what would you guys say are your staples? Like, what are the sabbatical year staples? And now with what Joe said, like, okay, now we got to think longer term. What are some of the staples that we should really be hanging on to? And I want to start with Brother Cyrus. What do you have for us, Brother Cyrus?
Well, naturally, you put up what you eat and what you need to do. And any good home economist knows, if they plan their meals, how much food they eat each week, how much food they eat each month, because they got to have a budget to purchase it. Okay. Now, here's the one thing I want to throw in. Get rid of all sugars. Okay. They're counterproductive. You eat sugar, your body has to use valuable proteins to break down those sugars, to get them out of your body and things of that nature. Get rid of all your sugars.
Are you referring to like processed cane sugars?
Processed sugars, yes. Things like maple syrup and honey, they're especially honey. It's a levulose that breaks down over a long, slow period of time, and so you don't get the body movements, a real peak, high, and then a low, and then your body having to constantly regulate the blood sugar. But if you're using levulose or honey, or using things like maple syrup or even cane syrup to sweeten with, that's much better than using processed sugars. We eat a lot of beans. That's really one of my go-to foods. So we have stores of dried beans, and being raised in Cajun, South Louisiana, I eat a lot of rice. My wife doesn't eat as much as I do, but we both love cornbread. So we have a lot of cornmeal put aside, a lot of flour put aside. In fact, we just bought quite a stock of cornmeal this past week, and we did buy some whole wheat flour this past week. We're here, like I said, in west central Illinois, and the Amish communities over here in Iowa are just a tremendous shopping experience. So we got some very good, nourishing food at low cost.
Let me pause you there real quick, Cyrus. Let me pause you there real quick. Do you recommend getting the flour or wheat berries in, you know, oops, my phone's ringing.
Okay. Now, if you're going to put up food long term, get wheat berries. If you're putting up food short term, it's okay to get the processed flour. But remember, as soon as they process the flour, if they take out the bran, you've lost 25% of the nutrition of the wheat. So we have wheat berries put up, sealed in sealed in Mylar bags. My wife's right here next to me helping me. We have it sealed in Mylar bags, but we also have them sealed in number 10 cans. So we also have rice and beans and oats and things of that nature. And I just bought some more oats last week. These things will last a while and they're very nutritious. Any good homemaker, male or female, can make various meals using the berries themselves. I mean, you can make a good soup using barley and wheat. But we have, I wouldn't even begin to venture a guess on how many mason jars, primarily quart jars, of turkey, chicken, beef that we've put up. That all we have to do is pour the jar into a pan, light a fire, turn on the stove, whatever you need to do, heat it up, and you have a very nutritious meal. And you can add your barley to it and let it expand and thicken. And, vegetables, we have tons of vegetables put up. But the one thing I want to share with everyone, and to me, it's a decisive thing. Going into 2016, I didn't know how that was going to work. Okay. So we harvested everything. Of course, winter is just another growing opportunity in South Texas. So we had things planted, but we were going to only pick it as we needed per day. And all of a sudden, come springtime, we had things growing that we had never planted on that land ever before. We had watermelons come up. We don't even eat watermelons. We had cilantro come up. We'd never planted cilantro.
So
We've
Cyrus,
thrown,
this was
we've
the
thrown,
sorry, this was the
yeah, go ahead.
spring. This was the spring after the sabbatical year.
Of the sabbatical year.
Of
Yes,
the sabbatical year.
of
Okay.
the sabbatical
So
year. Because I'm thinking I've got to let the deer come in and eat all my plants and stuff like that. Well, they did. And we had folks that, what do you have in the garden? Well, it's kind of catch as catch can. I'm not really sure. Everything's growing up. Pull the weeds back and look. We had potatoes that I had thrown into the compost pile that had sprouted and produced potatoes. Things that we were not even counting on having. All of a sudden, tomatoes reseeded and came up, and we had tomatoes in the spring of 2016, something that we hadn't planted. Cucumbers came up. Okra, we had a proliferation of okra come up, and deer love okra. And so I'm thinking, I can't shoot the deer. That's not right. And so, but we had so much okra, there was enough for them and us as well. And right now, or I say right now, I'm not there, so it's hard to tell you, but I have okra stalks that are 8 and 10 feet tall still producing okra since we've been here in central Illinois. But I want to just say something about what Brother Joe said. Get as much done before the end of this year. It's going to come swiftly. Okay. When destruction comes, it comes swiftly. You may go to bed one Friday night and have a really good weekend and you have a party with your family or party with your friends. And then Monday, the government closes the banks. We don't know what the situation will be. If you'll remember, I'm still saying, watch the period from the 25th of October to November 8th. Okay. That's, you got to be prepared now. Okay. Be prepared now.
yeah, that's the remind us again, Cyrus. So that's the next super cycle, correct?
No, well, we're in a super cycle already. It started September 25th. But I had told you that I expected something major to happen between the 26th and the 28th of September. It did. I expected a bump, financial bump, take place on Yom Kippur, and I expected just turmoil in the markets all through Sukkot, and maybe starting to settle out starting today. It might start to settle down a little bit, but starting the 25th, it could be, bad, catastrophic as far as the market goes. I don't know. I'm not a market person. I'm just watching the cycle.
Right. So yeah, I guess what I meant to say was that's the midpoint of the super cycle.
The 25th through I'm sorry, um, yeah, basically 26th of September through the 25th of October. That's the period of real high uncertainty.
Yeah, and I remember in our interview, again, this is episode 11 for listeners, go check that out. You're looking for war in Asia. Is that right? We're still looking for something to break out in Asia.
I'm looking for war to come out of it. It's my belief, and I hope I'm wrong. It's my belief that that war coming out of Asia will affect the United States directly. Okay. And by directly, I mean that either before the end of this year or before the end of next year, we're going to be engaged in world war.
Right. And so we privately you had sent me an email and said, hey, there was some explosion over the Yukon. Unconfirmed. Well, then Steve Quayle started talking about it with Alex Jones on InfoWars, and it's like, okay, well, looks like something did happen, and it looks like the origin was Asiatic, Eastern, somewhere. It wasn't Russian, right?
No, I don't believe it was Russian. I actually honestly believe it was an American ship fired a missile and it was intercepted. And had it hit something, they would have blamed Russia, is what I believe.
Oh, okay, like a false flag event then.
False flag, yes, that's what I believe. I believe it could have happened, but it was intercepted. So I don't know. Evil
Right,
people think of evil and do evil things all the time.
right. Well, Cyrus, thank you for giving us some of the staples. I'm a huge beans and rice guy. I'm Mexican American, right? Born and raised in the U.S., so I'm proud American. But yeah, Mexican roots, and man, beans and rice. You got me there, man. Yeah, I'm gonna. And it's funny. I live in a part of Colorado that is known for the beans. That's what they
Yep,
grow
yep.
here. So you've encouraged me even and Joe, and that's this again. This is why we're doing this, guys. Like I'm not all set up. I'm really not. If you came to my place, you'd be like, wow, dude, you got some work to do. I still need to put insulation in my walls, and it's getting cold, right? I'm working on that. I'm going to be working on that today as much as I can. But yeah, the beans. I gotta get some beans. Okay, now there's some things I'm writing down. So I appreciate that, brother Cyrus. Kyle, you also live in farming country, right? You live rural in Washington, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Right. So what are I know like Cyrus was saying, and Joe said this as well, I think that it really, we have to look at what grows locally, what's available locally. We have a lot of wheat here and we have a lot of beans. So I'm living good, guys. We have a lot of wheat and beans here. What are some of the things that you're putting away, and what are some of the things that you would recommend that we put away, Kyle, just based on your past experience?
Honestly, I think Cyrus pretty much hit it. I mean, I've got beans put away, I've got rice put away. I'm really right. I've got some wheat berries put away. That's the next thing I'm looking to try to find, a significant amount to put away. Beans, rice, flour. Yeah, Cyrus pretty much covered everything. Something else that I do too is I buy sprout seeds, just to give a little bit of green in my diet. I mean, before, I don't know how it's going to go this year, because I don't live in the city anymore. When I did the sabbatical year, I was living in the city. So now I have 2.5 acres. I'm out in the country. I'm surrounded by orchards and vineyards and hay fields and all that. So this is a new step for me here. But yeah, I had bought a bunch of sprout seeds the last time around. Because I had no yard. I couldn't go out there and eat dandelion leaves or whatever, grew. I'd go and do some foraging, up in the hills, it's like, I don't know if you have much for mushrooms growing around there or whatever, but I'd go pick morels or something like that, just enough for a meal, whatever we were getting out of the town, have a day, just different things like that. But I mean, I don't know, Cyrus pretty much, I think, covered learn how to cook from scratch.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with going to the store and buying, some packaged foods, and stuff like that. But that's not going to be your staple. They don't last really long. I mean, canned foods, they can last, of course, but I don't know. I still have food from 2016. So and I don't have much. I did get rid of some, gave some away and everything. Yeah, I don't know. Cyrus
Yeah,
covered everything pretty well there. I mean, I just tips and tricks. I don't know.
it's all good, brother. So a funny story for you guys. Ready? So the father had already put it on my heart in 2015. I actually bought a year's supply of food. Isn't that crazy, guys? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Christian, going to Christian churches. I didn't even know Torah. I knew just from a Christian perspective, like, oh yeah, that's cool stories and stuff like that. Oh, that's kind of, yeah, there's some interesting principles in there. But it was already put on my heart in 2015 to store up a little bit of food, a year supply, and I still have it. I still have some of it. So it's funny that you guys are like, yeah, I still have something from 2016. I'm like, wait a minute, I do too, and it was from the year 2015. It's so funny, guys. So
and
Kyle,
here,
do you garden as well?
I've always liked the garden. But for the longest time, I haven't had a place to garden. I got this place that we just got at the beginning of summer, and I haven't had a whole lot of time to do anything. So we bought it. It's 2.5 acres. It's got fruit trees on it. I've got apricots, apples. I've got grapes. I've got walnuts. I've got all
Nice.
kinds of different trees and stuff here. But there's about an acre to an acre and a half of the land that's just fallow. Hasn't, from my research from the neighbors and everything, this land hasn't even had irrigation put to it in 20 plus years. So between that and the person who owned the place before I got here, he just didn't take care of anything. So I've just been pruning trees and trying to get all the overgrowth cut back to looking decent and being manageable. And that's what my summer's been. And then I'm still working right now on getting irrigation out to the fallow part of the land.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. And the reason I kind of ask, if you're gardening and stuff, because my wife and I had a small garden this year and it wasn't super successful and nowhere near what Cyrus is talking about. That's for sure. Right.
yeah,
So I guess it's kind of a sore topic for me just because we've only been living here for a year. I don't know the climate. The sun is really high elevation here. It just burns everything and you got to feed them a lot of nutrients, the plants, the vegetable garden. And so it's a learning curve. And I just, for me, it was really hard, man. I gotta admit, like, it was really hard to garden. So if you're like me, hey, you just got to store it up, and I think, like I said, the dollar's still worth something. We're still able to use it to buy things. So I think we're in a good spot. We still have time. And that's obviously why we're doing this episode. And yeah, there's a few other things I wanted to talk about. What do you guys think about where to find good, like Cyrus, you mentioned Amish community. That's a good resource. I think we should all be looking for Amish communities. What else? And either one of you guys, Cyrus, Kyle, feel free to just jump in here. Where should we be looking for sources of just good things in bulk? I mean, Costco and Sam's are good, but I'm looking for, where can we get some good organic stuff? Like maybe Costco has some. Sam's doesn't have a whole lot of organic, I don't think, in bulk. But what do you guys think as far as sources that besides the Amish? Like, would the Mormons be a good place to go? The Mormon storehouse? Like, what do you guys think?
that would be my recommendation. They're not really hard to find. A little bit of Google searching, and you can find a Mormon storehouse somewhere in your vicinity. And they're pretty welcoming. Anybody can come in and buy. They're not like, oh, well, you're not one of us. You can't, whatever. So that's an excellent place. If you live in or even near a farming community, don't be scared to go and, go out there and try to like talk to a farmer or something like that, because honestly, they could probably make more money selling direct to you, because a lot of times they sell to, third party or whatever, and it gets processed into whatever and blah, blah, blah. So they don't get as much. So you could still get a really good deal and they can make money out of the deal, and everybody's happier, just buying direct from the farmer. And around here also, we have a bunch of like fruit warehouses. We have a lot of fruit around here. So you can go to the local fruit warehouses and talk to them. And a lot of times, especially if it's like the older last year's crop, you can usually get a pretty good deal and you can buy it in bulk. And so, for example, we grow a ton of apples here. And so you can go to the fruit warehouse or the apple warehouse or whatever. And a lot of people will do it and they'll go and they'll buy it for the pigs, whatever, But those apples are still good. They just might not be crispy or whatever. But you can turn that into applesauce. You can make apple cider out of it. There's a number of different things that you can do that you can get it for cheap, get it in bulk. It's work. You're going to have to put the work into it, but don't be scared of the work, because honestly, I think, any food after this next year, I think any food that you're going to come across, it's all going to be work. You're not going to be going to the store and buying canned tuna anymore. You're not going to be able to buy frozen burritos that you throw in your microwave. So learn how to cook from scratch, learn how to preserve foods. It's way cheaper. It's way healthier. That's my suggestion. Oh, something to look into too is honestly try to find methods of doing all this without electricity, because you don't know if the grid's going to be there. So if you buy a bunch of wheat berries and you're planning to grind it with your electric flour grinder and make your bread, you might not be able to do that. So either mortar pestle, get a hand crank grinder, something like that, so that you can still turn it into flour and make your bread or your pasta or whatever it is that you have plans with. Otherwise, you're just subject to, now you just got to boil it or sprout it before you can eat it.
Excellent tips, man. Excellent tips. And I'm curious, Cyrus, what do you have along those lines, brother?
The recommendation Kyle gave about the apples is very good. I'd like to add to that and say dehydrate them. We've dehydrated apples and tomatoes and what else have we? Cucumbers, okra, okra, potatoes, and just put up as much of it. And what you can do, add water, and guess what? It comes back. Okay, I mean, you don't have to eat it dry. I do. I love okra that's been dehydrated, guys. I'm a junkie for this stuff. But because as fast as my wife's making it, I'm sitting there doing this. But anyway, dehydration, don't forget, that will preserve things. Put it in a Ziploc bag, and or in a mason jar, and it'll stay for months, if not years. We can a lot, hundreds and hundreds of jars a year. And plus we have excess left from other years. So we can quite a bit. One of the big problems that people overlook, and I want to address it, water. You can go, I've gone 40 days without eating. You can go, 3-4 days without drinking, and your body starts shutting down because it has to start robbing water from your internal organs. So you start having organ failure after 3-4 days. Fresh drinking water. You've got to have a source of fresh drinking water. If you don't have a source of fresh drinking water, you got to have a method of purification. Okay, because waterborne illnesses, what diseases, parasites can kill you. Okay, I've been in countries where the water was not safe to drink, and because of sanitation practices and things, or should I say lack of practice. But, you've got to have clean drinking water. We have a little bit put up in the house for cooking, even even sanitation wise. Flushing a toilet, where are you going to get that water if the water shuts off? So we have water tanks to collect water. We have in New Mexico 6,000 gallon capacity, and then in Texas we have 1,000 gallon, a little over 1,000 gallon capacity. But then it's easier to get fresh water in Texas than it is New Mexico. Plus, we have a pond behind us. So, and all we have, Kyle, is 2.5 acres, and we have more than enough room. I think 3/4 of an acre will provide you with more food than you guys can eat. So, the first target you should shoot for is 1 gallon of water per person per day, and learn to live within that 1 gallon. Okay. So, for a person like me in the summertime, I drink 2 gallons of water a day. So I've got to take that into account. In the wintertime, I'll drink 1 gallon of water a day. And so I've got to take that into account in calculating how much water I need. But if you don't have a well and you can get a well inexpensively, like to drive your own well down to about 25 feet, do it. It may save your life. But if you put up wheat berries, dehydrated food, dried beans, dried rice, how are you going to get it to where you can eat it if you don't have water?
No,
Water.
brilliant point, Cyrus. It's funny here where I'm at, 220 feet from my well.
Well, see,
Drink water
everybody
well.
was telling me in New Mexico, the minimum well was 500 feet. And so I didn't have the money to, after buying land, I didn't have the money to drill 500 feet. That would have been about $20,000. And so I prayed about it, and I asked the Father to show me where I could find water. And I'm not a dowser or anything like that, but I was walking the land, and it was like, put a stake right there. I didn't hear a voice or anything. It's like, put a stake right there. So I grabbed a piece of 2x4 and I put it down, and I had a driller come out, and I told him, I can go down 200 feet. I can pay that much. And he said, okay. And he told me what the price was. It's been too long. I don't remember what it was. But he produced a 10 gallon per minute well at 141 feet. Nobody around me has one that shallow.
That's brilliant.
So put your faith in Yah, and he will provide it. That's all there is. The water, the food, he's going to provide it. Now, you may have to learn how to get to it, but he's going to provide it.
Now to add to that, when I bought my land, there was no well here, so I did it based off of faith, 100%, just like you did, like you're saying, like you're suggesting, and it worked out. It worked out, absolutely. Now, Kyle, I saw you. Go ahead, man.
Well, just because that they say that you have to drill 500 feet to get to water doesn't mean that you have to drill to 500 feet to get to water. It's just that's the aquifer that everybody's tapping into or whatever. So there's other pockets of water, and I don't know. I mean, you have the river. The river flows just as much above land as it does under. So even rivers that are dried up, I've seen in documentaries where rivers that have been dried for years, and people will go and they just start digging. They get 5-6 feet under in the riverbed down below, and all of a sudden there's water there. So there's water. It may not be the best water. It may not be the water that everybody's going after, but still, like Cyrus said, 20 feet underneath your feet, you probably do have water. If that comes back and you don't come after me or whatever, but that's just typically, from what I've seen, what I know, there's water. It just may not be the best water that everybody wants to go after. It just might not be that there's enough gallons per minute to suffice to supply a house. But it's there. And in a survival situation, if you can pull 5 gallons a day out of it, then that's better than nothing. Right.
100%. Now I do have a Cyrus question. Just because, with you guys heard the warning from Joe. When we're talking about storing for a long period of time, one thing that comes to mind is rodents, mice, and vermin, and just pests. I recently, unfortunately, even I'm parked right next to my house. It sealed up pretty nicely. Apparently, there were some gaps though, and I put some silicone, I put some foam. There's some things that I did, but a mouse got in there, and I had to throw away about 15 pounds of food, literally a couple days ago. I'm just wondering, how do you guys deal with pests? How do you deal with pests, Cyrus? Like, how do you keep them away? I have 3 cats. They didn't get the job done. How do you do it?
Well, don't feed your cats as well. And we have outdoor cats. We don't pet them. In fact, they're kind of afraid of me, even though they've known me for 5, 6, 7 years, because I don't make contact with them. And I have them living off of a ration of food a day. So that, and you can look on our property, cats are everywhere looking for food. So cats will do the job as long as they're not overfed. But sealing everything properly is the best way to go. And we use a lot of mason jars. Even if we don't can something in a pressure cooker, we may put, and we do put, seeds in a mason jar. Nothing's going to get in it unless you break the jar. But any of your dry goods, you can put in mason jars. Salt, things of that nature.
Pickle jars.
Yeah, pickle jars. The big pickle jars, 1 gallon pickle jars. Also, if you go to McDonald's, Burger King, any of these fast food joints, they buy pickle slices in bulk, and it comes in 5-gallon polyurethane containers, and you can store food in that. I would suggest putting it in a food safe bag and then putting that in a poly container unless it's a food safe container. But just this past week, I bought probably 12 or more food safe containers up at the Amish community, that they get things in bulk. They buy cinnamon in 5-gallon buckets. They buy pickles. They buy spices in 5-gallon buckets. They sell them to me for 99 cents. So, that's a bargain. When I come up here, I bring a trailer, but even my trailer, I need a bigger trailer, But use glass jars, use food safe plastic jars if you have them. Now, a mouse, given enough time, will eat these kind of frosted looking plastic jars because they're made out of PVC, polyvinyl chloride. And anything that's PVC tastes like salt to a wild animal. And mice and rats will nibble through a polyvinyl chloride jar. If you use drip irrigation in a greenhouse, make sure you have a lot of those drip tubes, because the mice are going to chew those because it tastes salty to them. So glass jars, especially half-gallon and 1-gallon jars, you can get for free at a pizza place. They come in handy. There are places on the internet that sell brand new lids for them, so you can replace the lids as they get older. Now, we used 55-gallon drums with lockable lids, and we packed a lot of wheat and things like that into 5 and 6-gallon Mylar bags. Seal it with, draw all the air out of it, put an oxygen absorber in it, draw the air out of it, and you can seal it with a regular clothes iron. Then you take that and pack it into the 55-gallon drums, and then you put the locking ring seal on the 55-gallon drum. And, it'll keep for years. But the most indestructible thing that you can put your food in is the best way to go. And if you have and what Kyle came up with, it's a very good recommendation. We've done it before. Go to your local Mormon ward and ask them who's in charge of the canning kitchen. And then go to that person and they will begin to introduce you to the people in the canning kitchen, and they will take you under their wing. They will give you the disposable clothes to put on, the hairnet that you'll need to wear and things like that, and actually show you how to can food. Do it. It'll be a learning experience. They're very kind, open people. And I've never had anybody say no as far as, hey, can we buy some of your stuff? Sure, absolutely. And but yeah, they have the best peanut butter in the world. It's just peanuts and salt. I mean, come on.
No
But
no canola, cottonseed, soy, and all those oils.
no. But they're a very welcoming group of people. I'm not going to say anything other than that. They're a very welcoming group of people. They will teach you what you need to know in order to can food. Welcome back, Brother Joe.
That's brilliant, Cyrus. Joe, welcome back. So yeah, I appreciate that, Cyrus. I appreciate that, Kyle. Since Joe's back, let's pick his ear a little bit. Joe, look, we already talked about some of the staples. We talked about wheat, beans, wheat berries. What are some of your best practices for storing food long term, especially what you're saying? You're talking about, whoa, we need to have at least more than a year. Now this is really piquing my interest. I want to know what you would do and what you're planning on doing. Especially you're given maybe a little bit more of a transient situation. Or maybe an apartment, or, you mentioned some of those things. I'm curious, how would you tackle it? Because I know somebody in the audience is listening and they're like, yeah, that sounds good, but I don't, I have 50 acres. You guys have 2 acres. Like, a lot of people don't have acres. How would you tackle this, Joe? What's on your mind? What are you thinking?
Well, okay. So first of all, if you got no land, no means, you got a 1-bedroom apartment and you got all your junk in there already, throw some of your junk out. You don't need it. If you're on welfare, you can't afford nothing. You're living paycheck to paycheck or check to check right now. Either the rent or food. That's your decision. Then, if you know that the sabbatical year is next year, I tell those people, try. At the very least, try. Take 1 extra can of beans. Buy 1 extra can, stick it underneath your bed. In a little while, you have 50 cans. Okay, that's 50 weeks in the sabbatical year. At least you're going to eat that one. You've tried. You showed Jehovah. There's too many people go around, I can't do it. I'm not even going to try. Okay, guess what? If I'm Jehovah and I hear you say that, good. I don't have to give you any blessings. Next. Right? So, as if I was Jehovah, I want to see you try. Yes, I know the whole society is against you. Yes, I know everything's geared for 7-day-a-week work or not keeping the holy days and not keeping the sabbatical year. The whole system's against you. I just want to see you try. If you try, I'll give you a little bit of a blessing. If you try a little bit more, I'll give you a little bit more. That's the way my brain works. I tried. I didn't know what I was doing in 2009, but I tried. And then I made another commitment. I said, can I travel to the feast 3 times this year and keep the sabbatical year? So I had to plan for that. And I did. So now, today, how are you going to do it? Plan. Everything you shove in your face, just figure that out, how much of that you're going to need for the next year. Not just the next year and a half. That would be the minimum I plan for. Right now, I'm planning for 10 years. I'm planning. I just caught the last part of what Cyrus was saying about canning. Okay, I don't know how to can. If I can my stuff and in 2 years, I'm depending on that canning to be good and fresh and right. If I've done it wrong, okay, So my brain thinks I got to go fail safe. I'm dry goods, and, a little bit of water, and there you go. I got stuff. You don't have to worry about meat. Meat you can do, right? It's not a sabbatical year against meat, so you can eat all the meat you want. You can buy it fresh. It doesn't matter. But it's only stuff you plant and harvest, right? Plant and harvest. Forgive debts. Read the Torah. There's a fifth one. I forgot what it is. Stock up food. That's what it is. So at least try. So I'm playing on dry goods, stuff that I can unwrap and eat right away. I'm thinking more and more about how to do food with less and less water, because that is the going trend for the next 10, 12 years. Less and less water. There will be less and less water available to you. Even though you're a saint, even though you're keeping Torah and you're being protected by him, you're still going to have to deal with less and less water. Less water to flush the toilet, less water to take a bath, less water to cook with, less water to drink. You're going to have to deal with that. So, Joe Dumont, the gloom and doom guy's back. Yeah. Hey, if you don't get ready, then get ready to die. So you can get ready to live or get ready to die. You got a choice, but it's yours. Get ready. It's coming. And if you don't believe me, great. Nobody believed me about 2020. It came. It went. 2020 was a pivotal year. And I was focused on the sword. I should have been focused on all three, but we did mention all three, famine and plague. And now plague is come and gone and still here. Famine is coming. Sword's next. So stock up.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Joe. I apologize. When I introduced you at the very beginning of this talk, I should have said, ladies and gentlemen, the only person that successfully predicted that 2020 was going to be the year where everything was going to change, our lives would never be the same, Joe Dumont.
Yeah. But that also is pivotal to understanding future prophetic messages. We knew 2020 was coming. We didn't know exactly what it meant. Now I'm looking back 2 years later. I know exactly what 2020 means, and I know exactly how it fits in the prophecy. And I can now connect it to other prophecies, which now tell me future dates. I'm not date setting. I'm just looking at prophecy and trying to understand. It's amazing. So the abomination is going to be made desolate. That makes desolate. That book will be out here hopefully by sometime in December. It's fascinating to me. It's just going to be a short book, but it's stunning. We need to all start. I'm changing the subject a little bit. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure what all you covered. We need to stop all the bitching and fighting going on between the different groups. You don't say the name right. Okay. You don't keep the holy days at the same, the Hillel crescent moon. You comb your hair different. You got a beard. People with beards are such idiots. So we got to stop all the fighting, because here's what 2020 showed me. It showed me when the martyrdom starts, and it shows me when the martyrdom finishes. It's about to begin. So you got to get ready, and you got to start loving each other. You got to start helping each other. Hey, I'm saving all my money. I got 100 million in the bank. I'm going to need that to get through. It's all in cryptocurrency, and all your gold and all your great, brilliant ideas that you got to survive is hogwash. If you don't love your brethren, you're dead. If you don't obey Jehovah, you're dead. I don't care how righteous you think you are. Your righteousness, as Isaiah says, is like a woman's menstrual cycle. It's filthy rags. We got to start loving each other. Stop this pointing finger, kids. We don't have time for that anymore.
Yeah,
we don't change.
I agree with you, Joe. And I'm a little guilty of that. I think we all are. And
Yep.
the word literally says, our Father in heaven is looking for the one with a humble and contrite spirit. That's the one that he's going to go ahead and show favor on. And I love what you're saying, man. It ties into everything that we're talking about today, because preparation, like you mentioned earlier, preparation or just observing the sabbatical year. Like, we're not preppers just for the sake of being preppers, but because we want to follow our Father. And so hopefully people don't mix that up. Like, our Father's commandments come first, prepping is second, right? And it's like, if we're
Yep.
not doing the commandments, if we're not doing this with the right heart, then, like you said, we're preparing for somebody else. I thought that was brilliant. I really did.
Well, I'm hoping that you might be preparing for me, because when I find your house empty and you're dead, hey, I got cans of food here. So I guess these people didn't obey. Look at the world population. We just hit 8 billion. We're about to have about 6 billion die over the next 10 years. 6 billion people around the world. Are you going to be one of those ones dead? It's just, how do you ensure that you're not going to be one of those ones? Obeying Jehovah. And just, that's it. But too many people are self-righteously obeying themselves. They develop their own church, their own mantra, their own theology, and they're not obeying Jehovah. It's just that simple. You got to obey him.
Yeah.
Pray and obey.
100% agree, Joe. Well, so I just want to kind of recap some things we talked about. So we talked about this whole idea of the sabbatical year. What's interesting to me is, I told you guys at the very beginning that I knew it like as Shmitah. That's what I heard people like Jonathan Kahn talking about. I heard all these guys talking about Shmitah back then in 2015. And so that's an interesting word. But we're really talking about two things. We're talking about agricultural rest. That's one part of it, at the end of every 7 years. And then we're also looking at financial rest and the release of debts. And so I kind of want to jump to Deuteronomy 15, and we'll kind of end here. Deuteronomy 15 verse 1 says, at the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts. And you mentioned this, Joe. You have a powerful testimony about this. And the word release of debts there is Strong's 8059, which is Shmitah, and it means to cease or rest from labor. So that's interesting. Release from debt. And I know, like you said, it's hard, but can you just briefly tell us like how that process of having to forgive debts for you, Joe, running a company in construction, right? Is that kind of how it was all going, and you had to forgive people that owed you cash?
Well, in construction, you're doing business, so you're still allowed to do business. We operate on credit, 30, 60, 90-day credit in our industry. But the debts that I was looking at were, personal debts from people that owed me money, brethren, not business people, not, the worldly people are just doing everyday transactions, but brethren who had somehow or another had come to a position where they owed me significant amounts of money. And it had been dragging on for years. And I just couldn't get them to pay up. So I read that in Deuteronomy about forgiving their debts, and I do not want to do this. Am I reading it? So to try and figure out how not to do it, I had to do a study on, and I kept coming up, you have to do it. So the Shmitah year began, and the last email about a month before came back with no reply. They're not going to pay it. So I'm wrestling with this, and then it says on the Feast of Sukkot is when you release it. That's the way I understood it. So I wrote them a letter at the start of the 7th month, and I wrote them, and I says, as of this letter, any and all debt that you owe me is now absolved. You don't owe me anything. I forgive the debt, and let's just move on. I hated that letter. I'm not talking $100. I'm not talking pocket change. I'm talking thousands of dollars, and not business related, but this was personal debt. I wrote it off. As soon as I wrote it off, the guy wrote back, "Oh, I'm going to try and pay you. I'm going to try and pay you." And I said, "Even if you paid me, I cannot accept it. It's a debt, I must forgive it. So you read in the last king of Judah, I forgot his name. The last king of Judah who went into captivity and died. Watch his son's eyes being poked out.
Hezekiah, was it?
Not Hezekiah.
No.
Not Zedekiah. Zedekiah?
Was it Zedekiah?
I'm not sure now. I got
I can't remember off the top of my head either. It sounds like Zedekiah. Hezekiah, Zedekiah, one of those.
Jehoiakim.
No, he's the one that went into captivity. The one that watched his son's eyes poked out. Zedekiah, wasn't it?
Zedekiah, yes.
Anyway, one of the things that says about him was that he released his debts, or he released his slaves and then brought them back into captivity within the week. And Jehovah goes after him and really, I think it's through Jeremiah, really reprimands him for doing that. So I did not want to forgive this guy's debt and then him offer to pay me afterwards and then accept it. So I said, no, your debt's gone. I cannot accept this. And he insisted on trying to repay it. He never did send me any money to test me, but I'd like to see if I passed the test or not. But I wrote it off. After that, my business started to boom. We went through a number of recessions, and I was busier than all get up through every recession after that. People were trying to rip me off. Construction, the business, they're all a bunch of thieves. So, but I was able to be in front of the curve of being ripped off. I was able to see it before it came and prepare for it or anticipate it and be proactive. When somebody laid me off because of the feast or the holy days, I had a job the next day paying me more money. Since I kept the sabbatical year, the blessings have continued to be there. There are trials, there are why is this happening to me type stuff. But if I look back at the overall picture, I'm now 64. I've got no complaints. I got complaints. I got nothing to complain about, right? I have been
beautiful.
blessed. I've been blessed abundantly. And I attribute that to, obeying God, and part of that obedience is keeping the sabbatical years.
And again, this is just something that is not really taught. It's not taken very seriously in a lot of the circles that I used to be in different congregations. So I'm just so glad that we're talking about this. And to really wrap things up, there is one more thing that Cyrus had told me in a private conversation a few months ago, and it's in Deuteronomy 31. Okay, this is what Deuteronomy 31 verse 9 says. So Moses wrote this law and delivered it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of Jehovah, and to all the elders of Israel. And he commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time, in the year of Shmitah, release, at the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before Jehovah your God in the place he chooses, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. This is a beautiful one. Cyrus, can you just tell us when you did this? Okay. And I really want you guys to hear Cyrus's testimony here. What happened? How did you do it? How did you read the law in a public setting? And I know you've done this too, Joe, but you should, I really want everybody to listen to Cyrus, because this is really cool what happened. But how did you do it? And then what was the result? Go ahead, Cyrus.
What we did is we picked a piece of property on the sidewalk, public property, set up a table, and we had ISR scriptures available for anybody that wanted them. We had signs, and we had a sign that said, what are these people doing? Okay. And of course, we put up Feast of Tabernacle sign, things of that nature. And we just had people, just pull up and immediately whip in, do a U-turn. It's like, you guys are keeping the feast? And it's like, yes, we are. I didn't think anybody kept a feast, and so we generated a lot of interest. We had people join our kahal or join other kahals, because we don't say, hey, you got to join us. We knew numerous kahals around us, so we're, hey, there's one here and one there. And we had people that we really made mad. They were angry. It's like, what are you doing out here, a bunch of jerks? So you get all kinds of reactions. And one reaction, and of course, we had that reaction just a few weeks ago. Somebody said, well, I don't have to keep the feast. Why not? Well, because I'm not in the land. I said, well, the scripture says, when you come into the land that I give you, okay, he gave me the United States, specifically Texas. I was born into that land. I was raised in Louisiana. I live in Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico. That's the land he gave me. He didn't give me communist China. He didn't give me communist Poland or Bulgaria, or he could have. All that was communist countries. He gave me the United States for a home. So when I was born into this land, that was it. Now I have to keep it because I need to be thankful for being an American and having the freedoms that we still have left, what little we still have left. Okay, anybody in North America, Canada, Mexico, United States, needs to be thankful for the opportunities that he gave us by being born here. But yes, we had people that, and they were just coming out of the woodwork. And it's like people would come search us out. Somebody would tell them about us, and they would come search us out and ask questions. And we would have, we had like 6 people reading, I think. I'm looking over here to 2 of my readers. We had 6 people reading and 2 or 3 people answering questions. It was constant. People were starved. They really were. Why were we doing what we were doing? And we've already planned it for next year. We're going to do it there in our little town of Normandy, Texas, because that's the land he gave me. That's where he put me. I'm there now. So wherever he puts me, we're going to do it. And really, it's, if you want to find an excuse to not do it, that's you. I find an excuse to do it. He put me there. That's the land I'm in. And so that's where I read the Torah. And we've had wonderful results. Our kahal has grown as a result of that. And we have, naturally, we send people to other kahal that are closer to them so they can socialize with that group. And it's been an outpouring. It's been an outpouring of blessing. It really has.
So Cyrus, so just so I'm picturing this right. So basically you set up a table, maybe a tent, have a loudspeaker with a microphone, and have people taking turns reading?
No, we had a table with people, so you could sit down and rest. You got to remember, even if Sukkot were to be in early November, it would be hot in Texas, okay? Like we say, it's hot as hell, but it's a dry heat. So it was hot. We didn't even set up a tent or a canopy. We're just sitting on the sidewalk in chairs with a table and one person reading 1 or 2 chapters at a time. And then another person take them. And we had signs that would draw people's attention, nothing crazy or psychedelic or anything, just signs. And I had come up with a cycle chart of the 120 cycles or Shabua at that time. And I had that posted. And I had the 70 generations from Adam to Yeshua posted so people could see how prophecy was being fulfilled and things of that nature. And they had questions. And so it was just an open air event. And unknowns to us, someone had bought the property behind us. The lady that originally owned it said it was okay if we weren't selling anything. I said, no, I'm going to give away Bibles. Oh, okay, well, y'all can go ahead and do it. And unknowns to us, somebody had bought that land and they were just going crazy. What are you doing on this land? I said, well, we're on public property. This is a sidewalk, So anyway, it was really a joy to see people react the way they did. And even the people that had an adverse reaction to what we were doing, that's good. You want people to have a strong reaction to what you say and do. Because if it's a strong reaction, it's emotional. Okay, so now you can categorize, is that person putting their faith and trust in Jehovah or in their money or in their, their name or reputation or whatever? or is this person truly putting their faith and trust in Yah's word? And so that's really, it was a wonderful time for us. And I hope that we have as many blessings this coming year as we did that year, because that just sticks in my mind and in my heart as being a really joyous time.
Yeah, and that's a witness, man. And what a witnessing opportunity. I used to personally hand out gospel tracts in the streets of Bourbon Street, New Orleans, and do all this kind of stuff as a Christian. And that stuff's good. I'm not saying anything against it, but this to me is a picture. What you shared with me, this is how it's done. And you have a scriptural foundation to show, hey, this is what needs to be done at this appointed time. And because it's an appointed time, I think it's you're just going to be blessed. There's no way around it, right? So that's encouraging for me. And I'm going to be looking for a place now in my town, because I'm only 10 minutes from a town, and I can do something like this. See what I'm saying? So that's encouraged me. And yeah, I'm excited too, because now I have the opportunity to do that for the first time ever, and to observe a Shemitah year for the first time ever. And I'm just excited, guys. Well, with that said, we've been going for a little while now. I'm just curious, does anybody have anything that they feel led by the Spirit, something that you would like to share? But I think we've covered basically everything that I was interested in covering with regarding this topic. So if anybody has anything, floor is yours, guys.
Did you talk about when you come into the land, what that means? Did you cover that?
Not well, it's funny because we were teaching about this a couple Sabbaths ago, and let's address that, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, well, when you only do the sabbatical year, or really any of the feast days, or really any of these little hard things that people aren't comfortable with when you're in the land. And Cyrus just did a good job, right? Like where you were born, that's technically your land. But also you have to think like, okay, the sabbatical year is about farming, right? And so the conclusion I came to is they were nomadic and they had a tabernacle. They didn't have a temple when the instructions were given. So when they came in the land, they're actually farming. Then, they're going to be keeping that sabbatical year in this prescribed manner. But I'm curious, Joe, what your thoughts are on that? Because I know like you've obviously had many opportunities to talk to people about this.
Well, that's everyone's favorite excuse not to obey. And that's
Right.
the one they use, not to obey. There's a number of scriptures that tells you that the earth is Jehovah's footstool. Okay, it's not just the land of Israel. The whole earth is his. So when the kingdom comes, the seventh millennium comes after 2045, is it only Israel that's going to obey? Then if it's only Israel, why does it also say if Egypt does not come up for the feast, they will have no rain? Then all the curses of Leviticus 26, when you look at those curses, are they happening only in the land of Israel? No, they're happening everywhere around the world. Who is it that's supposed to obey? Did Noah get given two different laws, one for the Jews a few hundred years later or 1,000 years later, and then one for the Gentiles? No, it was one law. There's one law for the Gentile and one law for the Israelite. If you want to become a part of Israel, you must become an Israelite. Choose whatever tribe, but you become an Israelite. And it doesn't matter if you're purple with pink polka dots, you will be an Israelite when you obey. Does it say you only have to obey the stuff in the land? No, it says you obey Torah, all of it. So, people can use that for an excuse, then great. Expect not to have to be blessed. If you are dealing with curses, then maybe look back and say, what is it that I'm not doing, that I'm not obeying? Maybe it's a Shmitah. Maybe you've cheated on the Shmitah. Maybe you knew it was, but you didn't. I don't really have to do it. Look at your life. Are you being blessed or are you being cursed? I believe I've had a charmed life because I obeyed. Yeah, I've got problems. Okay, but you only have problems in order to sharpen the sword. So do we drill down on our problems and go, oh, it's me, or do we look at all the blessings that we've had and say, wow, Jehovah's been taking care of me? Put yourself in Job's position. Job had everything. Then he had everything taken away, except for the nagging wife. That's the only thing he was left with, right? Why? Because Jehovah wanted to show him something more. So did Job complain about all the stuff that was taken away? No. He thanked Jehovah for the opportunity he had. So is it for just in the land? No. It's for the entire universe. It's one God, one law, one universe, and we're a part of it. Mars is going to have to keep the sabbatical year. Venus will have to keep the sabbatical year. Alpha Centauri, when we get there, will have to keep the sabbatical and Jubilee years according to Torah. Nothing's going to change that way.
Right. No, totally agree, Joe, 100%. And just to comment on a few things you said, like, yeah, what does Satan do? First thing he did in the garden was he got Adam and Eve's focus off of the abundance, and he's like, here, this is what you're missing out on, this one thing. He said you can have all these things, but you got to look at this one. Like, so we need to focus on what we have and be grateful. Gratefulness will defeat sin in our lives every time, right? And then you quoted Zechariah 14:18. I have it pulled up, but when you look at Zechariah 14, I covered this on the very last episode of the podcast, talking about the regathering of all 12 tribes of Israel. When you look at Zechariah 14, it's all future. So when you look at it and it says that Egypt is not going to receive rain if they don't come up for my feasts, hey, like it's for the whole world. It ain't just a country in the Middle East called, the modern day state of Israel. It's just not the case. It's everybody. It's worldwide. And brilliant. I totally forgot about that verse, but it totally applies, man. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts, but like I said, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground. I think we've given people a lot to think about. Like Kyle, you gave us a lot of practical tips. Cyrus, you gave us like a lot of your wisdom as well. Joe, I thank you as well. And I think just take whatever you need from this, take notes, write it down, listen to it again. But there's YouTube. We still have the internet, right? If you don't know how to do a certain skill, like Cyrus talked about, sealing Mylar bags with a clothes iron. That's easy, but go YouTube it if you don't know how to do that. There's certain things that, hey, you know what? We still have the internet. We still have the power of all this information at our fingertips. And so we need to be using this wisely, especially as we see the day of calamity approaching, which obviously Joe and I understand this to be, really hitting the fan next year in September 22nd, 2023. That's for me, that's like a cutoff date. But then Cyrus is saying, hey, watch out for like a few days from now. So, it's not looking good. The forecast doesn't look good, regardless of what you're looking at, whether it's celestial, astronomical, or just looking at what the scriptures are showing us from the counting of the abomination of desolation in Daniel 12. It just doesn't look good. But so hopefully we've given you a lot to think about, a lot to act upon, not just think about and consume as information or entertainment, but to actually act upon. And that's where the blessing is. So with that said, shalom. Thank you for joining us for this. Again, gentlemen, hopefully we'll have all of you guys back on again. We'll banter. We'll talk about another topic and, sharpen iron on another topic in the future as Yehovah allows. But it's been really, really an enjoyable time for me. So I thank you guys.
So here I am, broken open, emptied of myself, of my regret.